Hey, it's Steve again. Yesterday, spent most of our day at a makers festival, and it was really exciting to do a craft fair. This is the first time I've ever done that. Had a booth, and you meet all kinds of fascinating people. And if you're honest with yourself, anytime you're out in public places and you meet people, there's really two kinds of people you meet. The ones that you want to talk to and get to know, and the ones that you want to kind of avoid and maybe not get to know. There's a guy like that in your Bible in the book of Luke. Luke is in the New Testament, the Christian part. Matthew, Mark, Luke, third book in chapter 19 in the big numbers. You can read about him. His name was Zacchaeus, which is a Hebrew name, and we find from the story that he has a Hebrew background, but he's working for the Roman government. He's working for the opposition government and collecting taxes from his own people, which would have not gone over well with his own people. We find, if you read the account, that he was a man who was a very small stature, and I don't know what that was like growing up. Maybe you do. Maybe you grew up in a way that you were a little bit different than other people and you struggled with that. Maybe you compensated, maybe you didn't. What we do know is that this man, who was a small man, and maybe he was bullied, maybe he wasn't, but when he grew up, he found pleasure, or he took a position where he could tell other people what to do, and he could make them do what he wanted. And he was backed up when he needed or wanted to be by a couple of Roman soldiers. He could come to your house and demand money, and you had to give it to him. And he was good at it. There's two things that tell us that in the passage. One, he was the chief tax collector. He had climbed the ladder. He had skill. He was effective. He didn't care anymore that his own people would have resented him. He got it done. And that he was rich, because the Romans, as long as they got their money, they didn't care if you took extra money. So Zacchaeus had this job that would have caused him a lot of trouble with his own people. They would have seen him as a race trader, as a tool of the government. He would have been a hole in public places. And so Jesus comes to town. The Bible tells us Jesus has come, and Zacchaeus is curious. He wants to understand who this guy is. He wants to see him, and so he humiliates himself. He climbs a tree. Imagine this. You're a person of small stature. You're a person who's taken a job where you compensate for your smallness, and yet in this moment something's happening, and it's so important to you. You as a grown person, you climb a tree to try to see over the crowd, to see this guy Jesus. And Jesus stops as he's walking, and he looks at Zacchaeus, and he makes a comment. And you can wrestle with, what do you think it is Jesus would say? Look at a guy like that and say, "Stop what you're doing, Zacchaeus." Or look at it, say, "Why are you doing these things, Zacchaeus? Don't you know what it felt like when other people looked down on you?" That's not what Jesus does. It's not what he does at all. Jesus looks at Zacchaeus and he says, "Hurry down, because today I'm eating at your house." When you read the account, everything seems like Jesus was looking for Zacchaeus, that it was intentional. He does this on purpose. He's going to enter his house. He's going to step into Zacchaeus's private life, into his personal space. I was at a wedding in Mexico last week. I got to do a wedding for some friends who are from there, so it was a true Mexican wedding, and it was incredible. It was incredible to be with people where you stepped into their world, and as we're leaving the airport, one of the families said, "Steve, you have a family in Mexico now. You have a house here." I had entered their life. I had stepped into their space, and now I was part of their lives. I'm now part of it, and I'm welcome in. That's what Jesus is doing with Zacchaeus. He's going to enter into his space. That's really cool. Jesus is looking for him. He's going to step into the space of this guy that nobody would have wanted to befriend. And yet that guy, Jesus, befriends him. Read about it. It's Luke chapter 19. Everything changes for Zacchaeus. This changes everything. His heart burst open. It affects his entire life, his mindset, all the bitterness, the resentment, anything that had built up in his life, it changes because Jesus enters his life. So as you read a passage like this, there's two questions, there's two people you need to wrestle with to see if you identify with. One is Zacchaeus, and maybe you relate to Zacchaeus. Maybe you don't fit. Maybe you haven't fit. Maybe there's resentment in your life because of the way people have treated you. Maybe you felt like you were on the outside. Maybe you made some decisions that put you on the outside. Maybe you're continuing to do some things that put you outside of other people, or you've just struggled to connect and you don't know why it's that way. Here's part of what you need to see in the story. Jesus is looking for people like you. He doesn't treat you the way other people treat you. He wants you. He wants to enter your life. So seek him, ask. You'll find that the moment you begin to seek him, he's already been seeking you. The other person you want to think about in the story is not that you're Jesus, but maybe you need a Zacchaeus. Maybe there's a Zacchaeus in your life that really needs you. Maybe you've gotten your life in such a place that all the people you're around are people you want to be with, and there's nobody around that struggles with making friends, or nobody in your circle that makes bad decisions, or is a color that's different than your friends, or is wrestling with their gender in a way that's different than your friends. And maybe some of those people need you in their life to befriend them anyway, to step in and enter. Even if you've not agreed with all of it, even if it's uncomfortable, maybe that's how they will meet Jesus, through you stepping out of your comfort zone and into the lives of people who aren't perfect, who don't make you happy all the time, who maybe frustrate you when you try to have a conversation. But so many times in our Bible, those are people that Jesus is looking for, and he needs his people to be obedient to his Spirit to enter their lives. At the end of this passage, it's Luke chapter 19, verse 10. It's the passage, it's the verse where Jesus says, "For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost." That's his mission statement. Shouldn't it be ours? I'll see you later.